I'd just like to say welcome to everybody to our Inclusive Entrepreneur Friday briefing. I think it'd be really nice if we actually introduced each other and tell us a little bit about yourself, the business that you run, and perhaps if bring in Noreen, please, to start us off.
Right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a lovely Friday afternoon. Looking forward to the weekend in whatever form it takes. Those of you who know me, my name is Noreen Cesario. I'm the founder and principal of Market Accents, which is a consultancy dealing with strategic thought leadership, marketing and communications. And we basically help companies to find their voice in the market and to find their space and to develop the thought leadership to stay there. I've been following the inclusive entrepreneur scene with Jacqueline, and it is really exciting to see you all here. So thank you, Jacqueline, for inviting me.
Thank you. Lady Sharon?
Hello, I'm Lady Sharon Farley-Mason. I am proud to say that I'm part of the Inclusive Entrepreneurship. I run a business called Glamsticks, which is a multi-award winning business. And I bespoke mobility aids for people with disabilities. And in these times, I'm just expanding now into bits and bobs from around the house. That's me.
Thank you. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Haswell. I work with Chris Masters, who is also on the call, with Talking Finances, which is a financial planning business. My particular angle is in trying to include more women, both within the financial advice sphere, trying to encourage them to come in and seek advice, because we know that actually men are 3 times more likely than women to seek financial planning advice, and yet we live for longer, we earn less, we have less in our pensions. Arguably women probably need financial planning more than men, and they're not accessing it. So I've started running workshops and blogging about it to try to get more women on board with the whole idea of thinking about investment, pensions, risk, that sort of thing.
Brilliant, thank you. Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Hopwood. I run a company called Swift and Share SCT, as in Secure Car Transport. I have a Land Rover Discovery and a covered car trailer, and I offer collection delivery service for vehicles and on bespoke service, to and from customers' premises, eBay, bargains, up to bespoke or anything that the customer requires. Could be £100,000 luxury car, a Porsche or a Lamborghini, to and from the customer's premises, or where the customer requires. And that is basically it. I have mobility and dexterity problems, so if I can sit in the chair and watch telly or drive my scooter, then I can drive a vehicle and tow a trailer and hopefully earn some money. And I'm hoping to get into motivational speaking. That's my next project. So here I am, trying to present myself.
Brilliant, and it's lovely to see you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah.
John?
Yeah, sorry, you slightly off the pace there. John Cowan. I run a company called Spirit Motorsport. We run services for racing drivers, driver management, through to arrive and drive propositions as well. Quite broad-based, but struggling with coronavirus. Not actually struggling as in having it, but struggling as the business aspects with it.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Chris, is that a good point to bring you in?
So hi everyone, I'm Chris Masters. I run a financial planning business, Talking Finances. We're based in Berkshire, a small town called Datchet. I've been running the firm for about 6 years and advising for about 20 years. And I guess what we do with our clients who are business owners is we get them to try and think about the future, knowing that most of our business owners get very bogged down in running their businesses and they forget to look after their own planning, and they tend to focus all their efforts on fixing and running their businesses. So we try and get our business owner clients to kind of think of themselves separately to thinking of their businesses, because we find that people commit far too much not far too much, but they commit all their effort and time to looking after the business, and sometimes at the expense of looking after themselves. And that's finances and just general well-being as well.
Okay, thank you. Rob, could I bring you in, please?
So I'm Robert Winstonley. I've got an organisation called Beautiful Creator, and the goal of what we do is, in a basic, it's about compassion and connection through conversation. So supporting people into finding that little bit of daily joy upon their lives and figuring out who they are and where they want to go and supporting them to get there. Just before the outbreak, we were looking to deliver a programme at salons and through personal trainers to support people with mental health through different ways. So to provide a training course and also a drop-in wellbeing centre within those environments to give more support on a community base. And then the new idea during Corona is to deliver that programme, but more on a wider group to wellbeing groups in the local area to give them the skills and tools so they can move them on more effectively. So instead of coming from their own view of the world and how they think an individual should work, it be coming from more of a neutral point for the individual to be empowered by themselves, not by someone else.
Brilliant, thank you. I am the founder and CEO of Universal Inclusion and the Inclusive Entrepreneur. I'm an international advisor on increasing equality of access to life's opportunities, creating inclusive cities and organisations. I'm weirdly starting to be a little bit of an author and a poet. I lead on the Women in Enterprise APPG on diversity and inclusion, and I'm a trustee for Disability Rights UK, the International Council of Caring Communities, Foundation for Dependent Living Trust, Fluidity and Courage and Sparkle. I chair the advisory board for Ability Today. I'm also an ambassador for Glamsticks. Obviously, as those of you that work with me, I'm incredibly passionate about supporting inclusive entrepreneurs. And that's where we started. So from my own personal experience of developing a health condition in work and not being able to get back into mainstream employment brings us to where we are today. And the Inclusive Entrepreneur, quite simply, supports people who face barriers to accessing that enterprise. And it brings in people that support us to do that. We did start very much face-to-face in the early days, but as we've developed and the world's developed, and personally I just couldn't be everywhere that people were asking me to go to, we created the digital platform. And this Friday briefing is a little bit of a push in that direction following the pandemic, where our members were just suddenly feeling, generally who would have expressed being isolated anyway sometimes, completely isolated, and that they didn't really have a voice in the conversations and the measures that were being put in place by government to support people through this pandemic. So it's great to see everybody here, and it's really nice to see how we're growing. Steep learning curve for me in terms of Zoom, etc. But I'm quite pleased how it's going so far, and it's really great to have people involved. And that's perfect, Grant, because that's just time for you to introduce yourself.
So I'm Grant Logan. I'm the founder of Ability Today, which was formerly Disability Today. It's a social enterprise that I started way back in 2014 and turned into a social enterprise in 2017. Last year, we renamed as Ability Today because we felt it was the time to start focusing on what we can do rather than what we can't do. We're an online platform helping our disabled community with news and resources. And we are about coronavirus aside, we're about to launch an academy for disabled journalists in partnership with the National Lottery and the National Council for the Training of Journalists, which we're hoping, fingers crossed, is going to start at the beginning of May.
That's brilliant, thank you. I'm always so pleased to listen to all of your stories, and particularly when I hear some people within enterprise talking about disability and entrepreneurship in a way that it's kind of it's not real business, but actually the things that you're all doing just like blow that out of the water, and it's incredible to see. So I'm just going to go through what we'll be looking at today. So I suppose the strap line that I'm hearing more and more is the Carpe Diem. For us, it's about seizing the day. And we're going to look at some generic business advice. As always, we're going to have our disability related support section, our health and wellbeing section. And then I'm really pleased to say, because you've all been requesting this, so it's really nice to welcome our colleagues, Chris Masters and Carol Haswell, who will be speaking to us a little bit later around financial advice. Obviously, this is the part where we look at the generic support that business is offering, government is offering to business. And we do have a slide that we look at every time we do this, which gives you the links to the specific areas where government has put in measures to support people. And again, we did go through them in detail last week, but because we have our financial advisors here, I'm not going to do that particularly today, other than please look at the links again, just to keep yourself updated. I think the only two things I'd like to say is it was pleasing to see that the government has extended the timeline for people to apply for some of the measures that they put into place. It's interesting to see that having extended the lockdown, where they're going to go with this, because initially, if you think about it, they put in place, for example, £10,000 business disruption grants when they've looked at having 3 weeks disruption. We're now going into 6 weeks, and we could go beyond that. So it's going to be really interesting to see where they go with this and whether they put anything else in, or they see that's just going to be sufficient. Self-employed employment income support scheme, as we know, unfortunately for most of us, that doesn't, it's great if you meet the criteria. I think they are still listening, but again, it's just getting our voices heard, really. I did notice that FSB have actually made representation to government, again, about the more generic business support for current businesses that were falling through the cracks. But unfortunately, despite our representations to them, they're still not looking at people with protected characteristics. So I did tweet when they put this wonderful thing out, which is great. I did tweet just to say, please, can you add to your kind of representation to government, particularly disabled entrepreneurs who are not only falling through the cracks, but actually there are reasons that conflict with some of the support they already get that means they can't even apply for what would then be available to them. So we start to see the continuing terms in terms of the interest rates, which obviously I won't go into too much, having our financial advisors here today. They're far better qualified than I am. So it should be quite an interesting session again. So if we move on to disability related support, the issues remain the same, and it just obviously for the purpose of Chris and Carol, just to recap on some of that, we are going to talk about some recommendations to government. People, particularly disabled entrepreneurs who don't have a voice at the moment, possibly feeling that, as Martin Lewis has said, the government seems to have made a decision in terms of which are the businesses that it might be worth saving and which are the ones that possibly aren't. And somewhere somebody feels that our business are perhaps not worth saving, which is an awkward position to be in, and it's not a great feeling. But then thirdly, most of us have access to what's called the Access to Work Award, and there are strict criteria around that, so that if we were to try to apply for some of these measures that government has put into place, it would conflict with the criteria for that award, and we run the risk of losing our practical day-to-day support. And if having lost that, it'd be very, very difficult to get it back. So what have we asked government to consider? All of that and more. The more being just really to speak with us and actually consider the way that disabled entrepreneurs run their business alongside managing complex health conditions. It does need looking at with an eye to the need to be, whether he's going to conduct some equality impact assessments or something. At some point, quite confident he will get round to this issue, but we're not seeing anything at the moment. In terms of response from government to what we've put forward, again, we've had nothing further. I think last week I mentioned that we had a reply from my MP. I don't think we've had a reply yet from others who've written to their MPs. My MP, it was very much yes, I'm going to pass it on beyond the DWP now, but I still haven't had any response to that. Way forward is very much what we're going to look at now, which are the recommendations that we've put forward to the Chancellor. And I want to go over those again because I really want to reinforce with everybody, just in case, you never know, one of you might get a call from a journalist. It's really important to have these recommendations ready so you know exactly what you've put forward and what you want to say to them. Again, for people that have not been on before, the Access to Work Award has an annual cap. It's an incredible amount of money per year to support each individual disabled person who is within work, whether that be an employed position or a self-employed position. But they did put a cap on it. Not really sure where the idea came from for the cap. It doesn't relate to anything. It doesn't relate to any clear business decision in terms of putting the cap in place. But we've asked them to suspend it. And we've asked them to suspend it because the majority of us that run a business are usually right up to the cap or not too far off the cap. And if we're going to need additionality because of the pandemic, we would automatically not be able to apply for it. We've asked them to fast track any new claims because there is business growth at the moment. It's actually incredible to see how, by everything that's going on, there's innovation and people are finding different ways to trade. It's not necessarily the case that they're just going to be there without applications coming to them at this time, and we want to make sure those are fast tracked. We've asked them to suspend the annual turnover requirement. Again, a criteria of the award is that you actually earn what they set for universal credit. They'd asked us to meet in terms of our turnover. Interesting, because they've actually upped universal credit at the moment. They've put an extra £1,000 in. So it's a bit weird. So we have criteria that almost no longer apply, but we've asked them to suspend it. It would be very unfair if they held any of our entrepreneurs to that turnover under the current circumstances. We've asked them to allow for longer access to the mental health strand of the award. Again, there's debate about the effectiveness of this, but we've asked them to move it beyond the 6 weeks that they usually allow people to have. We've put a request to them to fast track any request for ergonomic assessment and equipment at home. For most of us, we combine working from home and doing what we do. But to be actually in a position where we're being asked to stay at home and we're trying to work from home without the right equipment isn't ideal, so we've asked them to do that. We've asked them to recognise and consider the way disabled entrepreneurs manage their complex health conditions and consider additional measures of support which do not require us to give up our Access to Work award as part of the application process. And finally, we've asked them to amend the self-employed income support scheme, recognise the particular needs of the disabled entrepreneur within it. Now again, unfortunately, we've had nothing back on this. And I've done the same again today. I've tweeted it everywhere. I've sent it, BBC, Robert Peston, you name it, it's gone to them. But our voice is competing with people who are creating innovation in how to respond to the pandemic, the medical response to the pandemic, etc. Neither is any more important than the other. What we're just asking for is equity within this process and equity in terms of having our voices heard. So please do keep all that in mind. If suddenly you find something you said tweaks the interest of a journalist and they contact you, then please, or your MP or whatever, please just relay those recommendations. Before we move on to health and wellbeing, does anybody have any specific questions about that?
Yeah, can I join in?
Yes.
Yeah, and Jacqueline, on your previous card, there was about extending the award for 2 years.
Yes, there was. Yes.
Which is ironic because of the muck-up. The technical difficulties I had with my last claim, and because it went on for so long, Access to Work, instead of having a renewal in November of this year, they very kindly extended my award till November of 2021. So if they want to extend it for 2 years, they can do it.
Oh yeah, it's not. There's nothing that we're asking that would be difficult for them. It's actually within the Access to Work scheme. This is easy. These are very simple measures that they could put in place. And equally, if they can find a way to bring us into some of these measures that they're putting in place, for instance, the business interruption grant, that could be paid through the Access to Work payment scheme. So it's, of all the things that are out there, this is a really simple one to actually resolve very quickly. But we're just not getting the attention at the moment.
No.
I'd like us to move on now to our health and wellbeing section. As you know, the Inclusive Entrepreneur is not just about the business strategy. It's also very important that, particularly for disabled entrepreneurs, we look at managing our conditions whilst running our businesses. And so we very, very firmly believe in the importance of managing our health and well-being. So this section, we normally have Aaron, who's our guru, if you will, speaking with us. Now, unfortunately, he said, can he duck out, but could we please just run a little bit of his program that he runs every week? Because I think he's put a link on the LinkedIn page, but he just wanted to remind everybody, and just if you could get this information out and perhaps join yourself as well.
Hey everyone, it is 1 o'clock and it's that half-hour segment of Healthy You with me. And today, what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit more time talking about things to do with the heart, and hopefully at the end have a bit of maybe a segment to show you some things to do that you can carry on with for your workout, and maybe hit some nutritional stuff as well.
So that will give you an idea of the kind of things that Aaron is covering within his weekly sessions, and you're all invited to that, where he looks at mental health, nutrition and exercise. So that's hopefully very useful for people. If you have the time to log in with Aaron's section once a week, that would be really good. In addition to that, obviously, we have contacts with Parinama, our lovely yoga teacher, and the really good fitness team. So, just at your own leisure, but just that we're mindful of how important it is that, especially in these times, even when we don't feel like it. And hands up, and I've said this before, week 1 of this lock-in, I'm going to be a yoga bunny. Literally won what they called a plank and I collapsed. So it's at our own pace, in our own time, and just trying to do things the best way we can. And also we've got Rob. Rob is do you want to just say a little bit at this point, Rob, about your past work in terms of coaching in respect to things like this?
So a lot of it really with what we're looking to do is, I prefer more the one-to-one stuff than group stuff. So a lot of the background's been through youth work and from the youth side of things. Started off through fitness, well-being, and then really just sort of helping to support people through isolation such as this. But I think I don't know about you guys, but with myself and the condition that I've got, this is just sort of second nature, being isolated. It's just same.
Grant was saying that actually. Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is that we've been there, done it, and got the T-shirt. So we've got the ability to people that are new to it and having meltdowns and everything over it. You can sort of use your own experience that you've been through and how you've got through it in the past, and then sort of copy and paste that to help and support other people. But a lot of the stuff at the moment is more towards skilling the individuals up within their industry, so they can come from that neutral place to help and support each other. But at the moment, people are just falling for chinwags. People are just bored, really.
I think that's really important. We did, it sounds a really twee name, and for those of you that not have heard of it, is our Pink Shoe Club, which is the Women in Enterprise group from Westminster. We had a virtual meeting yesterday, and I was actually quite surprised how emotional that was and how everybody was smiling, and it was really quite good to do it that way. So yeah, definitely. I think that connection, even though it's virtual, is really important. Thanks, Rob. So what we're now going to do is actually go on to our eagerly awaited session of today. So I'd like to welcome Chris and Carol again from Talking Finances. Now, I think probably the way we'll do this, before they speak, we've just got, I think, a couple of clips to show you. So we'll do that first and then bring Chris in to start with.
Hi, I'm Chris. Anyone who is thinking about planning their finances is very welcome to come and speak to me or any of our advisors to see if we can help. I'm really proud of every member of our team because here we all want to offer a service that speaks to everyone who comes to us on an equal basis. Combining an engineering background and being a fellow of the Personal Finance Society, I like nothing better than putting on my strategic thinking cap and working out a plan that works at all aspects of a client's life. I know that life is never simple, and I also know that we don't always behave in our own best interests when it comes to money. I encourage anyone who comes to our office to take advantage of our wealth of expertise. We are real people with real lives, and never forget that our clients are too.
Hi, I'm Carol. I'm probably a bit of a frustrated teacher, if I'm honest. I really enjoy finding ways of helping people to make sense of things, especially when it comes to finance and investment. I've started the Talking Finances with Women initiative because I think the financial advice world hasn't really grown with women in mind. So I'm on a bit of a mission, actually, to help more women grasp the importance of investment decisions on their lifetime finances, whether that's within their pension, ISA or other way of saving, and to do this in a way that makes sense to them.
But perhaps if I could bring Chris in now, just to continue with that. Thank you.
Hi Jackie, hi everyone. Well, I guess for today we're happy to take questions and people can talk to us about their circumstances and what they're having issues with. I thought maybe I could go over a couple of our clients we deal with and the issues they're having and the decisions they're having to make, and just share how we're communicating with them at this time, see if that helps you guys. I mean, most of our clients are ringing us up, business clients, and saying that all their orders have stopped overnight and they don't really know what to do, and so they are applying for the various schemes, but very few of those schemes have been forthcoming. So, I mean, what they are doing is going through, it might sound basics, but to do a budget plan, and so I get them to write out all their expenses and try and forecast those over the next 12 months. So when they call me up and we ask them to do that, I'm surprised to hear that most of them haven't. Because most people, I think, get stuck in the initial panic. I've got no orders, what do I do? And you keep running around in circles, panicking about what you're going to do and who's going to help you. But I think doing the basics really well at this stage, everyone should do. So sitting down and doing listing out all your expenses, and then doing a 12-month kind of budget, what expenses are going to be there every month for the next 12 months, so just a basic spreadsheet. And then taking their time to go through each expense and thinking, am I able to stop that at the moment? Am I able to negotiate improved terms, or not necessarily improved terms, but payment holidays or a reduced amount with all the expenses that they have? And that can be from personal finances with mortgages through to business loans, business overdrafts, so on and so forth. But having it written down gives you a place to start with. Now, if they're able to forecast what they think their expenses are, to do some loose forecasting what they think their income is likely to be, and work out what their shortfalls are likely to be month by month. Because if they are going to receive a package of support, whether it's grants or loans or anything else that they're applying for, knowing that it's going to last you for the amount of time that it needs to last you for is really important, because you may get an initial amount of help, but it may run short within 2 or 3 months' time. The government have announced measures to support people for 3 months, but I'm telling all my businesses they need to be fit and healthy for 12 months. I don't think this situation is going to resolve at the end of lockdown. I'm telling my clients for every 3 months you have off in kind of lockdown, you should expect 6 months before you're recovering to any type of normal business, even if you do. So taking the time to write out your expenses and model in whichever way you can do your income, it's just good business practice, but it surprises me how many of the businesses we speak to haven't done that as yet, and kind of get stuck in running around in circles. So that's where we start people to. We're also trying to overlay on the top of that. I think that the world is definitely not going to work the way it has worked, probably again. And that brings with it lots of risk, but also lots of opportunity. I think if you shut your business down for 3 months, hoping that you're going to open up the same business in 6 to 9 months' time, it's not a very good strategy. I think what you need to do is use time that you've been given when you're not necessarily fulfilling orders to think, well, actually, there's going to be a new way of working at the other side of this, and I need to adapt and change the way that I have been working to be ready for that new way. What we are finding is in our industry, we're a lot of face-to-face meetings, and you meet people and get to know them, this whole knowing your client perspective. And we very rarely did Zoom calls or communicated via email or through portals. And straight away we've had to switch to that model, and all of our clients who last year would have said to us, do you know what, we only work this way? And they've now all changed and said, we're happy to work in a completely different way because we just have to do it now. And we've just accepted it. So a business model that I didn't think existed 2 months ago has shown to me that it does now exist. And actually, I think going forward, clients that we will deal with will be much more sympathetic to working around us. So I don't know how you communicate and engage with your client base, but you may find that you get new clients come along who previously wouldn't have dealt the way you wanted to deal with from a practical perspective, who will now just see that actually that is a business as usual way of operating. And getting our clients to think through that, what do they want their business to look like through the other side? Because maybe there is a new way of working, a better way of working, that wouldn't have been on the table 4 weeks ago, but is absolutely how people will accept to work going forward. So that's a bit of what we found with some of our businesses. Another aspect is you have to be of a certain age, but you have to be 55 onwards. If you are 55 or older, you have access to your pensions. So again, some of our businesses will be taking the step now that when they've modelled, we get them to model their shortfalls month by month first and foremost. If they are over age 55, we've been able to show them how they can access their pension provision to maybe tide them over for a number of months. It's not an ideal solution, but it's a quick and easy one. They don't need to wait for someone to approve them. It's their own pension, and they are able to use some of that as a way of funding some of their shortfalls over the next few months.
Does anyone have any specific questions they'd like to ask? Some people may not feel comfortable asking some of the questions they've got to ask, maybe in this open forum. So I'm sure Chris and Carol will be quite happy to chat independently. I've got a few questions which might lead you to step in, but also some comments. So do you think, Chris, that the government kind of like keeping this under 55 for a lot of these measures they've put into place to help people is because they feel people can or should be drawing down from the pensions if they're over 55?
55 is pension legislation. It used to be the age of 50, so they've introduced it, changed to 55 about 10 years ago, and that was really, I think, to stop people accessing their funds too early. There's a principle behind the age of 55 that it's 10 years before state retirement age, so they're kind of accepting people who want early retirement will tend to take that 10 years before retirement age. There are some other provisions, people who are retiring on the grounds of ill health, or if people have had specialised professions where they had to retire earlier, but they tend to be footballers or athletes, were still able to do it. But 55 has been in place for a long time.
Kind of gauge where they're coming from, really, in respect of some of the things they're putting in place. I just want to comment on a few things that you are experiencing with your clients. And what comes to my mind is the world has had to put in place some of the most incredible, reasonable adjustments that it's ever had to do, in a way that, whereas we've been asking for these reasonable adjustments for a long time, and we have been met with, can't do it that way, we don't work like that, etc., etc. And that's gone. That, I mean, I know of one firm in particular that would have never considered working remotely. You know, it would have been impossible. They would have thought about the ethics of it, etc., who are now operating very, very well remotely. So, and would perhaps in the past have, if somebody would have asked to work that way, they would have maybe just been very reluctant to let them do that. So it's quite interesting to see how that is panning out. And equally in terms of adaptations, so within that new way of working and that reasonable adjustment, it's automatic that people would need to have adaptations to be able to do that. So for our community, this is really interesting to see. And I think possibly what we're hoping is that it does continue afterwards, and that people don't go back to that old way of doing things, because actually that opens up the market for us much more than it was before. So that's been very interesting to see. And even I believe that we're now going to virtual parliament, which puts another aspect to this, because again, in terms of increasing equity in our parliament, there's always been that, well, you can't do it that way. You know, you can't possibly have, perhaps it's not as easy for a disabled person to become an MP because of the way Parliament works. And again, that's just not going to be accepted anymore. So it's very, very interesting on so many levels. If I could ask some of the questions that people have raised with me. So in terms of some of the measures that government have put in place, clearly the biggest one that they've put in place is this self-employment income support scheme. And there does seem some confusion around that in terms of, is it your turnover they're asking for, or is it your profit that they're looking at? And how is that going to be looked at? Have you any comments on that?
My understanding is it's profits, and it's the profit that you recorded within your tax returns from the average of 3 years, from the 16, 17 through to 18, 19. So they're looking to replace the profit. I guess they're assuming that people aren't trading, so you don't have the trading costs. So it's what you would have received after that.
Yeah, it's quite.
I'm not 100% on that. That's just from what I've read.
I think you're right. I think what people are asking me is, and for you it probably seems a really simple question, but people are asking, well, what do they mean by profit? Do they mean the drawings that you take? Do they mean money you've reinvested in the business? What are they viewing as profit?
So profit would be what you record within your tax return. So to be what you're drawing as an income effectively. So you have a cost of doing business, which is all the things that you spend money on that you might put in your expenses tab. That wouldn't be included. It's what you make and get to keep of what your turnover is. So what you bill less what you're able to offset against expenses. So they're protecting the profits, i.e. the income piece that you would have earned.
Right.
So if you're taking drawings from a business, you'll be paying tax on those drawings at the end of the tax year. But you'll probably, depending on how you run your accounts, you may draw, say, £1,000 a month out of the business, but then you also allocate £200 or £300 a month into a tax fund. So it would be those combined amount. Your profit would be the tax that you're going to pay and the income that you've taken.
Right. Okay.
So they'll already know your tax return figures. They will calculate the figure for you and will give you a lump sum, probably towards early June, based upon what you're submitted through your tax returns.
Sharon, do you have a question?
Yeah. Is it limited companies that are registered at Companies House, or will it go on sole traders as well?
So the scheme, that grant is for self-employed people. If you're a limited company and you pay yourself salary and dividends, you don't qualify for that grant.
Right, but because
you'll be an
sole
employee.
trader.
Because you're a sole trader, you will do, as long as your profits average
yeah.
less than 50,000.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Do you have an accountant?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so your accountant would be able to give you the figure or the expected figure.
Right.
Because they'll have submitted your accounts for the 3 years. So
yeah, I have done. Yeah. And
yeah,
luckily,
so
I have been in
HMRC,
profit each time. It's not been a lot, but I've been in profit each time.
yeah, so if you took your profit for each year and averaged that out over those 3 years from 16, 17 through to 18, 19, and then divided it by 4, that's the lump sum you're going to get, or 80% of that figure.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
So if you average £16,000 worth of profit each year, you'll be getting a cheque for 3,200.
Right, okay, lovely. Thank you.
They are obviously trying to put some comprehensive measures in place, and I do think they're listening when things are highlighted to them. So I am still ever hopeful that we will get a better deal than we're getting at the moment once they're aware of the issues that we're facing. So, anyone else got any specific questions? No. Carol, did you want to speak specifically about the programme you're involved in terms of women in finance?
Yes, I can do a little bit, thank you. I mean, actually, just thinking just then, one of the things that I do in the workshops that I've been running is I ask the women, I present the women with some scenarios about, they're a little bit ridiculous, but they're meant to be about how well prepared they would be to cope with the unexpected in the future, and that might be, you know, having to give up work, wanting to give up work, their partner wanting to, or relationship breakdown, that sort of thing. And it's just really to sort of focus their minds on whether or not they would know where they are financially for a position in the future that isn't one that's currently in their plan. And I'm just thinking that, you know, here we are living the unexpected out in real time, and it's just a good reminder actually that for your personal finances, as well as your business finances, you know, knowing where you are and what you've got and how well prepared you are for the future is something that affects everybody. And you know, this is where I think a lot of women are falling a little bit behind the curve. So I only started this about, well, it was autumn of last year when I'd done the exams to be a financial planner, and I was really struck by how overwhelmingly male the whole industry is. I mean, the majority of the financial advisors are male, all of the investment professionals, most of the clients, and I just found myself wondering if it was a sort of service that I or my peers would actually want to take up themselves, or feel comfortable with, or feel that it was meant for them. And I kind of realised, well, I can't drag women off the street and force them to come through the door, but I can invite them in. So that's when I started running these really small informal workshops for women, where we just talk about how we feel about money, about long-term finance issues like pension and investments, and we also unpack some of the reasons why we feel like that. So a lot of it, I think, is to do with the marketing that has been directed very much at men for decades, because obviously men were the ones with the money. There's the economic history of women as well, which means that I think many of us have inherited a sort of very cautious attitude to money, mostly because we were historically in charge of the day-to-day budgeting rather than the long-term provisions. And so the idea is to sort of introduce concepts of risk and investing in clear, relatable language, just to sort of give women who feel that they're not as up to speed on it as they should be a bit of a boost in their understanding. I'm kind of playing a long game here. The workshops I offer for free, and I'm sort of hoping to create a client base from that. But I also want to kind of listen to the women as well who come in and see if what they're saying is going to help me to develop a service that they would want. And I think, you know, fortunately, Chris is very, he's given me free rein to do this, very much on board. Talking Finances it's got exactly the right kind of ethos for this sort of thing. I mean, it's quite local because, as I say, I'm inviting women into the office. That's where we run the workshops. But to try to widen the reach, I'm also blogging as well. There is a lot of activity around this subject. I think if you were to Google women and investing, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the market is absolutely saturated. But the women that I talk to don't even know it's a thing. They don't know it's out there because they don't understand, I think, in a lot of cases that they are putting themselves at a disadvantage by not engaging, by just sort of never really properly looking at their pension statement, not understanding what their partner has, how that affects them, that sort of thing. And I think there's also a bit of a problem of trust with many women in the finance industry. Most people don't like feeling they're being sold to in an area that they don't understand, and I think that is something that is very much a problem in financial advice. Now, obviously, my workshops are on hold for the moment because they do really work in a face-to-face environment, but if this goes on for as long as we think it might, then I will have to be rethinking that. So my immediate challenge really is to widen the readership of the blogs, trying to figure out how I can do that, try to build up trust and rapport with readers, to sort of, I suppose I want to kind of create ambassadors, not so much for the business, but for the idea that women need to get up to speed on this so that they can access what's on offer and so that they have control of their financial future. So that's where I'm at.
That's brilliant, thank you. And maybe, as we've identified today, this new way of working is probably going to be quite successful for you, so that's really good. I'd like to just bring in Mary, actually. Mary still has problems with her video, I think, but Mary, if you could please just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business.
Hi, my name's Mary Armitage and I'm co-founder of a company called Cecil Biot with my really old friend, well, not that she's really old, but I've known her since I was 11, Jacqueline Smith, and we produce ethically, oh, just wait a minute, yeah. No. Okay. We produce ethically and sustainably produced magnetic badges, and we just launched a new product called a Cassiopeia, which is made from recycled silver and is a symbol of women supporting women, which we're hoping to be able to present in this new way with the technology that we've got now. That's me, I think.
That's brilliant, thank you. For those of you that didn't see Mary's presentation last time, if you go on our page, the briefings have all been put onto YouTube, so you will be able to see them and find out a little bit more about Mary and the myth that led to the Cassiopeia, because it's very interesting story behind it. So that kind of brings us to an end of the formal part of today. So thank you so much, Chris and Carol, for joining us. And this really is the part where we ask if you have any questions about anything else you'd like to raise today before we conclude.
Yeah, no, I'm all right. I'm good this week.
Right, anybody specific? But again, you know, as always, if there's anything you don't feel comfortable speaking about online, email me, call me, or whatever. But it's been great speaking to everybody again. And obviously, if we get any updates throughout the week, we'll put them out on the WhatsApp group or on our LinkedIn page. But it's been lovely to see everybody, and we'll hopefully see you all next time. So thank you again, Carol. Thank you so much for joining us today.